All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And today I have a guest that we've heard from before, but about 20 episodes ago, Doug Grady. And a lot has happened, which is no surprise in a warrior's journey, that a lot has happened on the way. But we're going to come back to that. I'll tell you, remind you who Doug is and what he, from my perspective, and then we'll get into our discussion. So, first of all, success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombies as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life, entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value and a vision that goes generations into the future, and Doug Grady is absolutely no exception. He's an incredible warrior, and through his journey of over 30 years in business, he's become an author, an international speaker, transformational leader, mentor, and teacher. Doug has helped thousands of people reclaim their focus and grow toward their personal potential. As a speaker, he has been on the TEDx stage, delivered countless keynotes. He's an author of The Ripple Effect, which is a book that made a big difference in my life, which has been widely read and highly endorsed. He also developed the life-changing program, 40 Days of Focus, and Doug also invests a significant portion of his time and money to local and global causes. He's been on several mission trips, including to Ecuador, where he's part of a team building homes for the poorest of the poor. His company's writings, trainings, and music are all designed with one purpose: to help people reach their God given potential. Doug Grady, welcome again to Warrior versus Zombie.
Thank you,
How are you
David.
doing
Great
today?
to be here.
How's the world? Are you in the Atlanta area now?
I am, yeah. Alice and my wife and I actually just purchased our first home together about a year ago. So everything has been new here: the birds, the seasons, the foliage, the flowers, the butterflies. And it's just been a real joy to be here in our first home together. We've been together about 11 years now and had homes separately, but this is our first one together. So we're in technically Decatur, just adjacent to Atlanta.
Okay. And in your part of the world in Atlanta, I'm in Dallas. Uh, what's the focus like? I mean, again, there's all these fields and all this stuff going on in the world from, you can name it. And I would say that I'm very focused on the military side with a son-in-law in Afghanistan. But what all is amidst the conversation there in Atlanta or in Decatur these days?
Well, David, I don't know that I necessarily am around much of the common conversation. I stay focused on business, on family, on and every once in a while I do tune into. I was just on a trip this past weekend, my first live convention that I've been to since COVID. And I made the mistake of turning on the news and kind of turning into some of those conversations that I guess a lot of people are a part of on a regular basis. And I can get sucked into what's going on with the world that I can't control, or I can really focus on just what's happening in my own life, like what's happening in business, what are the things, the thoughts, the choices, the moving of the needle that is in the direction of life that I want to experience more of, that I want to give to the world more of. And so that's really my focus. And that's the conversation that I strive to stay in with the people around me. I strive to be around people that are doing their best to make the world a better place, period, regardless of what's going on around, with whatever rabbit hole I can get sucked into. And certainly I have been sucked into some of those rabbit holes, but I really do my best to tune out stuff that holds me back from being the person that I know I'm here to be.
Well, that's actually excellent because that's a good advice for any warrior here is that understanding just because the zombie herd is going in one direction and they're being manipulated to go in that direction doesn't mean we have to go there too. And I think staying focused, one of the things you just said, and I think at least I heard in what you said, was that being focused on what you can control, being focused on your own intent and the impact you can have around those that you're most closest to, whether it's in your community, your family, your church, whatever it happens to be, that's where we spend our energy and focus. And regardless of the noise outside our four walls or whatever, that being focused on that is what's going to move us forward. And being focused on things we can't control or we can't impact isn't a good use of our time. So that's kind of what you said in your nice little way of saying, yeah, I'm not paying much attention to that, right?
Well, it's easy to pay attention, and it takes a little bit of redirect to not pay attention. There's so much clamoring for our attention. In fact, I had a bit of a scare, David, last week. I was booked for a convention for a company that I'm part of, that I'm building, and I was starting to feel a little sick, and I rarely get sick. And I thought, well, it's just allergies. It's just going to go away. And if I ever come down with any type of thing, it goes away in a day or so. And it kind of persisted. But I drove into Nashville, and literally the day of the convention, I went in to have a COVID test. And I was pretty convinced that I had COVID just because I was very congested. I only had one symptom. I was congested. I couldn't breathe properly. Didn't have a fever or anything else. But I was pretty darn convinced that I had it. And gratefully, I did not. But that was something completely out of my control that, okay, well, wow, I'm about to be a statistic. I'm about to have my weekend completely derailed from something that I was super excited about due to no control of my own. And it really just got me thinking. I mean, there are a lot of things that we can't control. And if it was positive, I would have just been stuck in my room or driving back to Atlanta, and it would have been out of my. I can't be irresponsible and show up with a health situation that could impact others in a negative way. But so I kind of went down that path. Like, if that happened, well, I have to accept certain things that are out of my control. I have to put myself in that space to determine, okay, can I show up in a healthy, powerful way, still not feeling great physically, or do I need to take a backseat and not do that? So it was really an interesting mental, emotional exercise to maneuver through that. And it all worked out. I'm still kind of recovering. You can kind of maybe hear it a little bit in my voice. I'm still not 100%. But there's been a lot of people affected drastically by this, and it's tragic, and it's sad, and we know people personally that have been impacted by COVID and that have suffered tremendously, and some that have died. And it's just a tremendous wake-up call to, how do I want to live? Faced with our own mortality. Okay, I know people that have died from COVID. I thought I had COVID. I could die. I mean, it's a little bit dramatic, but it's on some level, it's true. We can all die at any moment. There's a reason why we're here. There's a reason why you're here. I should be dead right now. A lot of people should be dead right now. And for some reason, by the grace of God, we're here. So how do I want to play this? How do I want to maneuver through the muck and the mire and all the media crap that I, could really don't want to get sucked into? I still have a choice on how I want to show up, how I want to be for my wife, how I want to be for my business, what I want to contribute to, how I want to show up in this conversation. Am I going to half-ass this, or am I going to really just be present? And I don't know what the hell I'm going to say, but I hope it's a contribution to the people that are on this call. And I hope it comes across as sincere and authentic, because that's the life I want to live right now.
Well, that's very powerful, Doug. And frankly, that is why, we need to live our life and understand what our intention is and what our focus needs to be, and stay on that path, because we can't run from a virus. There are things that happen. God doesn't guarantee us another day on the planet. And so every day we have to kind of live in faith that we're doing what our life purpose is, what we're supposed to be doing, and try to minimize the influence of the distractions around us each day,
That's right.
might take us off that path. Well, let's do this. I think that was a great check-in. I really I think the audience probably has a good sense of your impact and focus. And I want to come back to after the break. We'll take a quick break. We'll hear a little of Ricky Jean Wright for those in the audio audience, and then we'll come back and I want to hear a little bit of your story, Doug. And I know you told your story before, and to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure what part of it. I've heard your story a couple different ways, but I'd like for you to kind of tell us how you got from where you are, or got to where you are today, from whatever point on your journey you want to start, frankly, because I've got enough journey behind me that we could spend a lot more than 5 or 10 minutes talking about my journey up to this point. So let's come back. We'll hear a little Doug's story, and let's hear a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright, and It's Not the Getting There. All right, we're back. And for those on the live audience, you didn't get to hear the music, but we are going to continue on forward, and you'll get to hear about Doug's story. So, Doug, share with us your synopsis of your story, or what has led you to where you are today.
It's such an open-ended, wide, question, and I get this question a lot on interviews. And there's a story that's in the book that people have read about. I guess what I haven't talked a whole lot about through my life is I was raised as a son of a preacher and son of a nurse, and it was a very conservative upbringing in my youth. And I've been kind of a rebel for most of my life. It started in my youth, and that's been, the whole gamut of rebellion, the good, the bad, the ugly. It started in my youth, where I was just a really shy, introverted, awkward, just weird kid. And my parents pushed music and the arts and intellectual pursuits. I was in the choir. I mean, first of all, I'm awkward and uncomfortable and weird. And then I'm in the band, and I'm in the choir, and I'm in all the smart classes. So it's just a recipe for being, one of those nerdy little kids nobody wants to talk to. And I remember, as soon as I could, one of my healthier forms of rebellion, David, I rebelled against all that stuff, which I'm not saying was a good thing. But when I rebelled toward sports, I rebelled toward athletic pursuits. I met a kid named Keith Hamrick, who, believe it or not, I'm still friends with this guy today. He's in my book. And he was the coolest kid I'd ever met. I mean, he was popular. All the girls liked him. He was athletic. He was confident. And I looked up to him, and Keith happened to be a wrestler. I'm like, oh, this cool kid's a wrestler. I'm going to be a wrestler. And so that was my first venture into sports. And eventually I excelled at the sport. It was the first thing that gave me confidence as a young boy, as a person. I became a leader as a young kid within this particular field of athletics. And I think it really shaped my life. And through all of my rebellions, even the unhealthy ones, that kind of led me off the path of the man that I know I'm here to be, a man of faith and a servant of God. I've been far from that path through my rebellion, but I've always been able to come back to this athletic grounding. And it's something that's always helped me to reclaim my focus, reclaim what's important to me as a man. And I take a lot of my analogies, a lot of my metaphors, a lot of my trainings out of, we are who we are. And when we bust our butts in the gym, we bust our butts athletically, when we stretch ourselves physically, there's correlations into how we live our life, period. If I can get myself to the gym when I don't feel like it, when I don't want to, when it's inconvenient, when I'm too tired, I can use that same pivot point to push myself, to stretch myself, to do it anyway in business and other areas of life, honoring my wife. My wife's love language is act of service, which translates into things like doing the dishes and doing laundry. And you know what, David, I hate doing the dishes and I hate doing laundry, but you know what? I love my wife. And so, can I love my wife more than I despise those menial tasks of doing the laundry and doing the dishes and folding the laundry? And so, that's been a great grounding point for me. This youth rebellion that turned into sports. It's been a centering area for me, for my family, for my higher self, and even for my faith. Believe it or not, when I bust my butt in the gym, there's a sense of almost of meditation and spirituality. And that may sound a little weird, and I know it's not the case for everybody, but that's the case for me. It makes me a better man, period. And when I let it go, I can become a complete nut job. And so that's been a foundational, fundamental, structural element that has grounded my life. And when I get off out here, which I do sometimes, and I have sometimes, that's a way for me to bring it back in and center myself and refocus myself. So that's a little bit of a microcosm into my youth that I haven't shared a whole lot in any of these interviews, and much of that is not in the book. So a little peel back of the onion here for Doug Grady's rebellious childhood.
Well, actually, I love that, Doug, because yeah, I didn't pick that up in the ripple effect, and I don't think I've picked that up before, but I think that sometimes when we are rebellious, we are very much in our own intentions, pushing back against things that we at least perceive in our world that we're asserting our will into the equation. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, if we're rebelling against something that's good, as a Christian myself, as somebody who tries to set a positive example for my 5 kids and my now almost 6 grandkids, and just all of those things, right? I've got one on the way. That's why it's almost. I mean,
Almost is fantastic.
actually, I believe he's here. He just hasn't been presented yet. But anyway, the whole thing is that rebellion. If we don't, it's kind of like treating a symptom, understanding what it is behind that rebellion. If what's behind that rebellion, or your pushback against your environment, whether you're a kid or now as an adult, I think a lot of times you've kind of dissected that in your story to the point saying, well, that actually is a positive root cause for some of the things that you've done in your life, like the ripple effect, which is basically had a huge impact on me, because it's that one thing, that one choice
Right.
that you choose wisely, that you focus on, that becomes a catalyst for many, many, many other things in your life. And you just kind of exercise that logic. And at least as I was listening to you in your telling of your story. So what I'd like to do, Doug, we could talk a little bit more about your story in the next segment. But what I really kind of want to do is come back, because I know since the last time we talked in the middle of the zombie apocalypse, or the pandemic, as some people call it, I know things have evolved in your world. I want to talk a little bit about why you're doing what you're doing today. I know you're doing a lot of the things that you were doing before, but you're also pivoting or changing, and you've taken things to another level, kind of like I have and we have with now you're part of the Be Connected community. And
Mm-hmm.
we've kind of tried to elevate things, get our message out, refine our message. We found some things during the opportunity that we've been given to focus outside of maybe our turn the crank status quo. And so I'd like to take another quick break. And I really want to get into where you are now. I think and I really want to, whether it's FinFit Life or whatever you're inspired to talk about right now, because that's what a warrior is. My kids often say, hey, Dad, you're full of it. That's because I'm full of whatever it is that I'm focused on. And I know that's a big focus for you right now. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back more with Doug Grady and Warrior versus Zombie after hearing a little bit from Ricky Jean Wright.
Fantastic.
All right, we're back, and we've got an amazing warrior here, and the check-in's been awesome. heard a little bit about Doug's story that I hadn't heard before about his rebellious youth, and that was pretty fascinating. Connecting those dots. But so, Doug, tell us about where you are today, why you're doing what you're doing today, the unique value that you see yourself providing, and then can you give us a little bit of impact in terms of what it is you'd like to do on the scale of impact you'd like to have?
Sure, absolutely, David. Yeah, it's interesting. Right before things shut down, so I guess we're running on about a year and a half now. Much of my work has been in the financial world. Clients like Mutual of Omaha, World Financial Group, New York Life. And I had two speaking engagements right before. I mean, literally, it was one of them was in Seattle, and they were just starting to do an elbow bump because they were concerned about this, topic of COVID. It was just in its infancy as far as the media coming out. And then I came all the way across country. I did a speaking engagement in Birmingham, came on two wheels. So I had two back-to-back speaking engagements with Equitable. I went down to have a little just relaxation. What ended up being, I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up being a hippie commune in Apalachicola Bay, Florida. So I tried to be a hippie for 3.5 days. I called my wife and said, well, I'm trying to be a hippie. She's like, you'll never be a hippie, honey. Maybe a beach bum, but not a hippie. But I tried. And then I came back into Atlanta and everything shut down. And so it was this, like, what are we going to do? I'm a professional speaker. I'm used to being on stage in front of people live, and none of that is happening. Everything was canceled, as you know. And so, my first pivot was I had some coaching clients at the time. All of them happened to be in the financial services industry. My wife got laid off and our lease was up. So we ended up just after some soul searching with the spirit led us to say, okay, we have no home, you have no job, I can work from anywhere. I'm not sure what type of work it's going to be, but we'll figure that out. We went down to Florida for a couple of months and I launched a group coaching program for financial advisors with Equitable down in South Florida. And that became a pivot point to work with people online on an ongoing basis. And most of my clients have been either real estate or financial services. Meanwhile, I guess about 9-10 months later, this company that you mentioned called FinFit Life came on my radar. It was a man that I've done business with. His name is Lou Garcia. It was with another company called World Financial Group, but I know him. We became friends. I've been in 4 or 5 of his offices through the years. And so when he changed ships, so to speak, it really caught my attention because this man had some success with another organization. And it was this really unique combination of physical fitness with an industry that I had done some extensive work with from the outside in that really caught my attention. I've been able to work with advisors and really get them from one level to the next. The people that are I'm really good at pouring into committed people. And those that are committed, when I work with them on a business coaching standpoint, have had some extraordinary results. We had a young man in Oregon. He generated more business in 1 quarter than he generated in the entire year previous just by implementing some specific. I mean, he had to do some work, but he had to shift some things. But it was just remarkable what people can do with the right coaching and the right commitment. So in the back of my mind, David, I was thinking, well, I have a pretty good business practice. I have a pretty good coaching practice, and I have a pretty good fee. But if these people were on my team, what would my team be like? And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. I've got a little bit of background in insurance in my 20s, and it was just kind of right time, right place. Everything matched up for me. I'm kind of wired for this. Like my skill set that I've developed over the last 30 years is conducive for building an international organization in the financial services world. And then you put the health and wellness on top of it. That's really my lifestyle. So I look at this as a lifestyle organization that happens to market a financial product. It's the only product of its type that incentivizes health and wellness. So there's just so many things that resonate with me. Now, here's the downside. I'm not very good at herding cats. And right now I'm in sort of a cat herding stage of business. I don't have a lot of committed people, but when I do, this thing is going to be off the hook. So I've got, right now I'm in a building phase. And as you know, when you're building, it takes a minute to get the right people in the right places. But it's a journey. I'm excited about it. We just had our first ever live convention in Nashville, got to connect with some of the other leaders around the country. We'll be international this year and intercontinental as early as next year. And so this is where I decided to hang my hat, plant my flag, so to speak, and I'm pretty excited about it.
Well, I can definitely see the excitement, and I think that what you've described, and I think there's a lot of warriors, whether they're people that are in the Be Connected community, which is a very new, early innovator opportunity, or whether it's FinFit Life or anything else, right? The beginning, there's a lot of excitement. People get emotional, but then we're all kind of subject to our status quo, our comfort zone, kind of pull back, don't really get committed. You talk about being committed. It
Right.
really is important to understand that you either are moving forward or you're just staying in your history, and then your history becomes your destiny. So there's a lot of things when new opportunities come where you can see the possibilities, but if you don't put the work in and you don't,
That's right.
right, committed means that you're actually, when you're, whether you're coaching somebody on improving their business or the business that you're in together, or they're on your team, or they're just, you're trying to coach them. I've found that it's a way, unless they're willing to take that daily walk or that daily step in the right direction, do it anyway, as
That's right.
somebody I know really famous said, um, and actually get in there and make those calls, or take that course, or fill that gap, or get that help, or whatever it is. It's not going to happen, and it's hard. I'm not a motivational speaker. I've never been I don't want to be in motivational. I don't want to motivate you to do something that I
Yeah.
think you should do. You want, as I do, I believe, people who are inspired, that are inspired to do it, because they understand the impact and the how it's going to impact their journey.
Yeah, I mean, David, I find that in business and in life, it can be a very fine line between who we're being and who we can be. Like who we are in your terminology, it can be a very thin line between warrior and zombie. I mean, that same pivot point that gets us to let ourselves off the hook. Sometimes I call it the F it's, the forget it's. Forget it, I'm not going to do it. Forget it, it's inconvenient. Forget it, it's too much. We can actually use that same F it, that same forget it to say, well, yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, it's inconvenient, but forget it. I'm going to do it anyway. It's the same pivot point that can be used either way. And, I've been in this space for so long. Sometimes people remind me of things that I've said that I don't even remember saying. And one of my best friends reminded me a couple of weeks ago of a conversation we had when I was in my 20s. And the conversation was something like this. And I'm paraphrasing myself. I'm paraphrasing my friend, paraphrasing me, paraphrasing myself. So this is something about what I said is that the healthy habits are very challenging at times to implement, but the unhealthy habits, they're always ready to go. So they're always ready to suck you back into zombies, always ready to go. But warrior can be somewhat elusive to have it consistently if we're not intentional, if we're not focused, if we're not creating a structure that supports warrior happening more often. It's easy to be a zombie, man. It's easy to turn on the television and zone out. And I mean, I find that actually, believe it or not, I find that helpful sometimes for my downtime. I like to zone out. I like to I'm an introvert and I like to just kind of have my space and zone out a little bit. But that's a moment in time. And on the forefront is always the zone out is to help me to be more focused, better prepared, rejuvenated for, in your words, the warrior mode, and for me just to access my higher self more often. But it's a real thin line, and that thin line is I get excited about something, or I have an associate get excited about something, or I have a coaching client get excited about something. But are they willing to cross that line consistently and do the work that's necessary to realize that excitement into an actual existence? That's where warrior mode comes out. I mean, kingdoms are not built by zombies. They're built by people that are ready to take action and do it consistently and face all their demons and do the freaking work.
One of the things, Doug, that I always want to hear at this segment, and you've given us a lot of powerful things. First of all, your zombie self is your comfort zone. It's the 95% of the thoughts that you process every day that were the same thoughts you thought yesterday, and they're things that you don't have to really engage your frontal lobe. You don't have to think about. That's not your intention, or if it is your intention, then that's great. If you want your history to be your destiny, then just keep moving. If you want to change anything, making that decision, and it's not a decision you make once, it's a decision you make every day, as you point out in the ripple effect and other things. If anything were possible, Doug, with where you're focusing your efforts now in the FinFit life and where your practice is, if you will, the things that you're doing now, what would your impact be at this point?
It's an interesting question. Anything is possible. It's just so broad and it's almost like unimaginable for me to even think about what that would be. But what I am focused on is just being a man that God made me to be more often. And help. And I'm always going to fall short from that. I'm never going to be perfect, and you're never going to be perfect, and my team's never going to be perfect, and the people I work with are never going to be perfect. But can we kind of access this pendulum of being a little bit closer to our higher self, a little more often, a little bit further away from the things that we say we don't want, the fear and the anxiety, the frustration, the stress, the anger. I mean, if you're on the call, just insert your favorite negative emotion here. We all have it. And it's never going to go away. It'll never go. I got news for you. It's never going to go away. You will always experience some level of your lower self. So welcome to the Demotivational Seminar. But here's the thing. We can get a little closer to our higher self a little more often. We can get a little closer to enlightenment. We can get a little bit closer to spirit. We can get a little bit closer to our power a little more often. So how do I create structure for that for myself, my family, for the people that I communicate with, and how do I help others to do the same? And then who knows what that's going to create. That could be something greater than I've ever imagined. If I can just work on getting myself a little closer to my higher self a little more often and helping other people do the same. That's my focus.
And that's a great focus. And again, that's that daily journey that we talk about that is in the theme song of this podcast, is that every day we just get a little closer to that vision of having an impact on the world, as you said, helping people reach their God-given potential. I've heard you say that a number of times. And millions would be a great thing. And really but focusing on doing better, I reflect on my recent accident with my golf. It was on the 18th hole. And I only had the one hole to complete, and I was was halfway there. And I realized I couldn't use my zombie brain at all because I was in pain. And I just got up and I executed a first shot and got it on the green, and a second shot and got it in the hole and parred the hole after
Wow.
having an accident that took me to the hospital right after that. So
Interesting.
it's amazing how when you have no choice, as you said, but to engage, and I think we all have a choice, but when you're in a situation where you are engaging your intention and staying focused, how much more you can do. So, okay, well, let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We're going to come back with what I call the land the plane segment. We're going to talk a little bit about any major takeaways you'd like those warriors that are here live and those that'll hear this after the fact, and then make sure we understand how we can stay in touch with you, because you're definitely somebody that I like to stay in touch with, and I know a lot of our warriors are excited about hearing where you're at today. So let's take a quick break with Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Warrior versus Zombie and Doug Grady. All right, we're back, and I am really blown away as always. I love the conversations, Doug, that we've had, and this one is especially inspiring to me because of where you're at and how you've navigated through the zombie apocalypse and your perspective on the fact that we all have that zombie. We're very much aligned there. So, but with the warriors that are here live or listening to us, if there were anything that you'd like us to take away from sharing this time with you and hearing your story and such, can you give me one or two things that you'd like us to make sure we don't forget?
Yeah, I mean, I think one is that we all have our stuff. We all have our stuff. It may feel personal to us. It may feel very unique, very special on some level, but it's just stuff. And so part of part of your stuff may be a little different than my stuff. Your challenges, your external situations may be a little different than mine, but we all have our stuff. And part of it is just how do we maneuver through that in such a way that we're growing consistently toward the person that we can be. And, I think about times in my life when I have allowed the stuff to pull me totally away from the man that I could be, totally down just the rabbit hole of just lower common denominator crap. And so I think it's just learning from the highs and the lows. Sometimes it's the lows that can be the catalyst for some of the greatest experiences of our life. I know that this past year and a half, I've had some lows. I know a lot of people have had some incredible lows. But if we take a look at what is the message there, what could the message be? Like, where might this be bringing me to? How might this be just a natural progression in what I'm here on this planet to do? And just living from a standpoint of almost like curiosity. Well, isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that we ended up here? So what could be possible? Like, what could be possible now? Yeah, it sucks, and I certainly didn't expect it. And it's uncomfortable, and maybe you want to put some other adjectives in there that are a little bit more explicative, but it's where we are. So given where we are, what is next? And one, to sound maybe too cliche, and obviously it's the subtext of the book, one simple choice can change the course of your life. It doesn't have to be the perfect choice. It doesn't have to be the perfect time. It certainly doesn't have to be the motivated, inspired, grandiose, enthusiastic. It doesn't even have to be I'm feeling positive choice. It's just something that moves us in the direction of our higher self. And if you don't know what it is, it's being around people that can potentially be a sounding board for you, that can potentially draw out something from you that maybe you're not drawing out from yourself. I try to surround myself, particularly when I'm not feeling great. I try to put myself in an environment of people that love me and that care about me and that see me as a person maybe more powerful than that at the time I'm seeing myself. So all those things are important. The choices, the little things that we do or don't do are very important.
Absolutely. And if somebody hasn't read your book, the ripple effect, you'll get that in spades. And as you said, moving forward, staying focused on that, realizing that who we surround ourselves with is critical to our continuing to move forward at times. All are great warrior lessons that everybody listening to this should take away. Well, Doug, let me ask you this. How do we stay in touch with you other than I'm going to say that's how you stay in touch with me is via Be Connected. And now that you're part of that, just becoming part of that community.
Mhm.
And I'd like to see, I think you could have a great show on the Be Connected community here,
Great.
and we can chat about that. But how else can we connect with you? What's the second best way?
Well, I'm a teeny little baby bee on Be Connected. So I just got on there after David's repeated recommendations. So I appreciate that very much. So I welcome that connection. You'll be probably my third or fourth connection at this point. So I'm growing my little beehive, but I'm very easy to find. I'm very active on LinkedIn and on most social media platforms. I am not on TikTok, so don't look for me there. But I'm pretty easy. My website, just my name, it's douggrady.com. So I believe that great things happen in conversation. So if you listen to this live and you'd like to set up a conversation, I welcome that. If you listen to this on a recorded basis, this has been fairly one-way exchange here. We're talking kind of to you, but I'd like to think that we're talking with you. And if something resonated with you and you want to have a conversation with me, I invite you to do that.
That is so awesome, Doug. And actually, I have in my RP Networkers group, we have a number of financial guys, and one of the guy's name's Grover. He's been in the financial business for a long time, and I think it's true with any industry. When you really sit down, is it's just a conversation.
Mhm.
It's just really an opportunity for us to understand what you invited our audience to do is reach out to you and have that conversation. And I can tell you with from personal experience that that conversation will be interesting as this one has been. And so we're going to wrap up this episode. And Doug, I want to thank you profusely for being a guest on Warrior versus Zombie. I'm excited about the opportunity to introduce you to the Be Connected community and expand your little B to a big B and create
Thank you.
more audience. And we can, again, I'm channeling from all platforms into this platform because it makes it easier to kind of focus, right? It makes it easier to see because these are the intentional connections that we want to have. So with that, we're going to land the plane here. Doug, thank you again. Any other final remarks, or are you ready to land the plane?
Choose simply, choose powerfully, choose now. One simple choice can change the course of your life.
Beautiful. Choose simply, choose powerfully, choose now. Love it. All right, well, let's hear the final segment of Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there. And we'll be back next Thursday at 11 a.m. Central with another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And thank you again, Doug.
Thank you.